All right, let's dive right into one of literature's most haunting settings, Satis House. This is a place where time itself has just stopped. And the past? Oh, it's not just lingering, it's rotting. We're going to unpack two really key chapters in Charles Dickens' Great Expectations to figure out what kind of strange, unsettling education our young hero Pip is about to get. So that really brings us to the big question, right? What kind of lessons can a boy possibly learn in a house where all the clocks are frozen? I mean, forget about a normal school. Satis House is Pip's classroom now. And his teacher? The one and only Miss Havisham, completely eccentric and, well, pretty vengeful. The lessons he's going to learn here are all about social class, cruelty, and this burning ambition, and trust me, they're going to shape the entire rest of his life. Okay, so let's start with chapter 11. This is when Pip goes back to Satis House, and it's where he gets his first real hard look at a world that's just built on, well, on lies. It's all hypocrisy and the slow, creeping decay that comes from a broken heart. So the first thing that happens is Pip runs into Miss Havisham's relatives, and you gotta give it to him. Even as a kid, he's got a razor-sharp sense of who's genuine and who's not. He immediately clocks them as toadies and humbugs. I love that phrase. He just sees right through their phony concern. They're not there for her, not really. They're just vultures circling her fortune. And for Pip, this is like lesson number one in just how insincere adults can be. And then he sees Estella. You know, for just a second, Pip lets himself hope. He thinks maybe, just maybe, she's changed a little. He even tells her she seems less insulting today. And what does he get for it? A slap. A hard one, right across the face. It's such a brutal, cruel switch. And right there, Pip swears to himself that he is never gonna cry for her again. Of course, as the older Pip tells us, that was a promise he just couldn't keep. The next scene, wow, it is straight out of a horror movie. Pip has to walk Miss Havisham around this enormous dining room table, and on the table is the wreckage of her wedding feast. I mean, it's just covered in mold and cobwebs, a complete monument to decay. She's taken this symbol of a new beginning and twisted it into this grim, morbid symbol of death. And then she tells Pip, that this is the very table they'll lay her body on when she dies. Talk about creepy. And then we get this quiet but totally chilling little reveal. After all those fake relatives have finally left, Miss Havisham just turns to Pip and says, "It is my birthday." And you realize, oh my gosh, that's why they were all here. They show up every single year on her birthday, but they're so terrified of her that they don't dare even mention it. It just perfectly captures that suffocating atmosphere of fear and things left unsaid that just hangs over Satis House. But believe it or not, the weirdness of the day is far from over. Pip wanders out into the gardens, and things are about to get even stranger. A totally bizarre and sudden confrontation is just around the corner. So Pip's in this rundown old greenhouse, and out of nowhere, this pale young gentleman appears. And the kid, with basically no malice at all, just challenges Pip to a fight, like a proper boxing match. It's so formal and polite, it's weird. Pip is completely bewildered, but he feels like he can't really say no. Okay, now this is where it gets really fascinating. Pip, right, he's just a blacksmith's boy. He fully expects to get beaten to a pulp. But he doesn't. To his absolute shock, he's way stronger and he wins, easily. But the biggest surprise isn't even that he won. It's how the other boy reacts. He's not sore about it, he's not humiliated, he's a total good sport, just cheerful and gracious. And Pip has this little revelation, that this boy is a real gentleman in his character, not just because of his social standing. Maybe character matters more than class, after all. And who was watching this whole time? Estella, of course. She comes over, all flushed and excited by the fight, and she rewards Pip by letting him kiss her on the cheek. But you know what? This isn't the amazing, triumphant moment you might think it is. Older Pip tells us it felt completely unsatisfying. Just a cold, hollow prize for a weird victory. All right, that brings us to chapter 12. And this is where the one-off strangeness of Satis House turns into a long, unsettling routine. A routine that's really going to start messing with Pip's view of the entire world. So for a whole week, Pip is just petrified. He's sure he's going to be arrested or punished for that fight. But then he goes back and nobody says a word. It's never mentioned again. And this just completely messes with his idea of justice, right? So for the next 8 to 10 months, he falls into this bizarre pattern. He goes to Satis House every other day just to push Miss Havisham around in her wheelchair. Can you imagine? A huge chunk of his childhood just spent in this creepy, decaying house. And it's during these long, repetitive months that Pip's real education begins. While he and Estella are playing cards, Miss Havisham is constantly drilling into him how beautiful Estella is. And then she leans in close to Estella and whispers this one cruel command: break their hearts. She's literally forging Estella into a weapon, and at the same time, she's teaching Pip exactly how to be her first victim. And then, just like that, it's over. As abruptly as it all started, Pip's time at Satis House comes to a screeching halt. The weird fantasy world he's been living in is about to crash right into the cold, hard reality of his life. See, back at home, his sister, Mrs. Joe, and his uncle Pumblechook have been letting their imaginations run wild. They are convinced that Miss Havisham is about to make Pip a gentleman, give him a massive fortune. But the reality? It's so much more ordinary. Miss Havisham has zero plans like that. Her intention all along was for Pip to do what boys of his class do: become a common blacksmith's apprentice. And to make it all official, Miss Havisham sends for Joe to bring Pip's indentures. These were basically the legal papers that would bind Pip to Joe as his apprentice. And pop! That's the sound of the fantasy bubble bursting. Oh, and you can just imagine Mrs. Joe's reaction when she finds out that Joe got invited to the grand Satis House and she didn't. She absolutely loses it, just flies into a jealous rage because she was left out. So Pip leaves Satis House. He's officially bound for the forge now. But he's not the same boy who walked in. Not even close. He's been taught some powerful, painful lessons about shame, about ambition, and about the agony of loving someone who will never love you back. Which really leaves us with one final big question to chew on. Was this whole twisted education at Satis House ever meant to help him, to lift him up? Or was the whole point, from the very beginning, just to break him down? All right, let's dive right into Great Expectations, specifically chapters 13 and 14 of Book 1. This is where we see something really fascinating happen. It's the exact moment a young boy's dream starts to curdle, turning into a total nightmare. We're going to explore how getting just a little taste of a grander life ends up becoming this heavy burden that Pip just can't seem to shake. So what does happen when the future you're given feels less like an opportunity and more like a cage? That's the exact question we're going to tackle today, seeing it all through Pip's eyes as he gets officially locked into a life that, well, he's suddenly starting to hate. Okay, so our story kicks off in chapter 13. Pip and his wonderful, kind brother-in-law Joe get summoned to Satis House. That creepy, decaying mansion where the very strange Miss Havisham lives. So this visit, oh man, it is a masterclass in social disaster. You have Joe, who is just so completely overwhelmed and intimidated that he can't even bring himself to speak to Miss Havisham. Instead, he talks to Pip, expecting Pip to relay everything. And you can just imagine how Pip feels. He's desperate to seem uncommon and sophisticated, and here's Joe, in his eyes, acting so common. Pip is beyond embarrassed. He is absolutely mortified. And this really shows us how much his thinking has already changed. And just like that, with a few cold, dismissive words, Miss Havisham basically says, "You're done here." She cuts him loose and seals his fate, or so it seems, because there's one last very important piece of business to take care of. All right, so Miss Havisham offers up a chunk of money. Now, you'd think this would be amazing news, right? A cause for a huge celebration. But for Pip, it doesn't feel like a gift. It feels like the final click of a lock, chaining him to the blacksmith's forge for good. And the amount is 25 guineas. Now, that was a lot of money back then. On the surface, it's presented as a kind of reward for Pip's visits to Satis House. But really, it has a much more binding purpose. This money is meant to officially pay for him to become Joe's apprentice. So this type of payment was actually called a premium. It was the fee you'd pay a master craftsman to take on an apprentice. The thing is, Joe never would have asked for it. But by paying it, Miss Havisham makes the whole thing official, legal, and in Pip's mind, absolutely inescapable. There's no getting out of it now. So they get back to town, and this money just sparks a whirlwind of activity. First, you've got good old Joe telling a little white lie to his wife, Mrs. Joe, just to make her feel important and soothe her pride. And it works. Her mood does a complete 180, from sulking to pure delight. And what does she do? She hustles everyone off to the town hall in this frantic rush to get the papers signed and make Pip's apprenticeship legally binding right then and there. And this is where we get this just brilliant, grimly ironic moment. Their ridiculous, pompous uncle, Pumblechook, is in charge of getting Pip there. And he's so rough about it, shoving and pushing Pip through the court, that people standing around literally think Pip is a young criminal being dragged in to face a judge. It's such a perfect, dark piece of foreshadowing for how trapped and condemned Pip feels in his own life. So the papers are signed, the deal is done. And of course, what do the adults decide to do? It's time to celebrate. They all head over to the Blue Boar Inn for a big dinner to toast Pip's great fortune. And the scene is just chaos. You've got all the adults, Mrs. Joe, Pumblechook, the Hubbles, Mr. Wopsle. They're loud, they're happy, they're celebrating, they're all toasting what they truly believe is this amazing future laid out for Pip. But the guest of honor, the one person this is all for, he's the only one in the room who's completely miserable. Yeah, Pip feels nothing but this deep, crushing sadness. And that quote says it all, doesn't it? I had liked it once, but once was not now. It just cuts right to the core of his change. The life everyone is cheering for is the exact life he now looks down on. The distance between how they see his future and how he feels about it, it's a massive, unbridgeable canyon. Okay, so that brings us to chapter 14. The party's over, and now we get to see how this horrible feeling of wretchedness really settles into Pip's day-to-day life back at the forge. Reality is about to hit, and hit hard. He's completely miserable in his apprenticeship. And the truly sad part is that he feels he has to hide it from Joe. The things that used to make him feel safe and comfortable, they now torment him. It's like he's looking at his whole world through Estella's critical eyes, constantly hearing her voice in his head calling him coarse and common. Think about it, his home, the blacksmith's forge, the trade itself, even the landscape of the marshes that he grew up in, all of it now feels tainted. It's all just one big, constant reminder of this common life he is so desperate to get away from. This ambition he has, it's like a poison that's seeped into every corner of his world. And this is how Pip sees himself now. It's a perfect, heartbreaking description, isn't it? He's not that simple, happy kid anymore. He's now a boy whose ambition wasn't born from some grand dream, but from shame. The shame he felt at Satis House. And that feeling has just made him completely and utterly unhappy with his own. The one thing keeping him from completely falling apart? It's Joe. Joe's simple, unwavering kindness is the only anchor Pip has in this storm of misery. It's the only reason he doesn't just bolt. And he thinks about it, running away to be a soldier or a sailor. But it's not about becoming uncommon at that point. It's just about escaping. Joe's decency is the only thing keeping him there. And all of this really leaves us with a big, lingering question, doesn't it? Pip is absolutely convinced that becoming uncommon is the ticket. It's how he'll be happy, it's how he'll win over Estella. But what these chapters really start to show us, in a pretty powerful way, is that when your ambition comes from a place of shame, instead of, say, genuine passion, well, maybe it's not a path to happiness at all. Maybe it's just a path to an even deeper kind of misery. You know, this one line, it tells you everything you need to know. It's the real reason behind what looks like a kind act, a young man named Pip teaching his guardian, Joe. But this isn't about generosity. Nope, it's about social climbing, and it's the tiny spark that's about to ignite a single, absolutely devastating day. Welcome, everyone. In today's explainer, we're diving deep into one pivotal day from a literary classic, straight out of chapter 15 of Great Expectations. We're going to see how a boy's quiet ambition spirals into suspicion, conflict, and, well, shocking violence. Let's dive right in. So here's our roadmap for how this whole day unfolds. We'll kick things off with a simple Sunday lesson that's actually dripping with selfishness. Then we'll follow Pip on a super tense social visit, see an actual brawl break out at the forge, and trace all the strange, ominous signs that lead to a tragic ending in the mist. All right, so our story starts with Pip trying to share his new education with Joe. And on the surface, you'd think, wow, what a great kid. But when you look just a little bit closer, you find out the real reason he's doing it is, well, it's way more selfish than it looks. And this is really the heart of the problem, isn't it? Pip might tell himself he's all about helping Joe, self-improvement and all that. But the truth? He's terrified that Joe's commonness is going to rub off on him and ruin his chances. He isn't trying to lift Joe up for Joe's own sake. He's trying to polish him up so he won't be an embarrassment. It's kind of sad, really. It's his survival strategy for the rigid class system he's so desperate to be a part of. And this whole idea of reshaping his world, it doesn't just stop with Joe. Pip's next move is a very calculated one. He decides to go visit the wealthy, super eccentric Miss Havisham. And believe me, this decision immediately puts everyone on edge. What Joe says here is so important. He gets the unwritten rules of their world. See, back then, people from different social classes didn't just, hang out. If you crossed that line, it was because you wanted something. Joe knows instinctively that Miss Havisham isn't going to see this as a friendly hello. She's going to see it as a bill. So Pip's request for a half-day off to go make this social call, it doesn't just raise a few eyebrows. It basically lights a fuse back at the forge, and things are about to get explosive. What we're seeing here is a total clash of values right in their own home. When the journeyman, Orlick, demands the same holiday Pip is getting, Joe, being a fair guy, says, okay. But Mrs. Joe, she completely loses it over the lost wages. She feels like she's being left behind, and her frustration just pours out. It forces Joe to defend her, even though her anger is the very thing fueling the whole fight. And man, things escalate so fast. It starts with a simple demand for a day off. That leads to a protest. That protest triggers a nasty insult. That insult forces Joe to step in, and bam, within moments, fists are flying. All the resentment that's been simmering in that forge, all because of Pip's special treatment, has just boiled over into a full-on brawl. So Pip literally leaves the chaos of this physical fight behind him, only to walk straight into the cold, quiet, psychological tension of Satis House for his big meeting with Miss Havisham. And this is the question on everybody's mind. In a world with such strict social lines, Pip's visit just doesn't compute, unless he's after something. The idea that he might just want to say thank you or maintain a connection, that's completely foreign to them. And sure enough, he hits a wall of suspicion from every direction. Joe basically predicted it. Sarah Pocket greets him with a look that could curdle milk. And Miss Havisham just comes right out and says it. I will not give you anything. They can only see him through the lens of money and status. They completely miss what he's actually there for. So once Miss Havisham realizes Pip isn't after her cash, she finds a much better way to be cruel. She tells him that Estella, the girl Pip is obsessed with, is gone. She's been sent abroad. And then she just twists the knife with this question, watching his reaction with, and this is a direct quote, malign enjoyment. Ouch. And you think the day couldn't get any weirder? Well, think again. After escaping the awkwardness of Satis House, Pip gets roped into reading a play that feels, well, a little too close to home. So get this, the play is about a young apprentice who ends up murdering his uncle. And guess who they make read the part of the murderous apprentice? Yup, Pip, the kid who's about to be officially apprenticed to his uncle-in-law, Joe. Talk about creepy foreshadowing, right? It just casts this dark shadow over everything. Okay, so this brings us to the end of the day, where everything that's been bubbling under the surface, all the tension, all the ominous signs, is finally about to come to a head. As Pip walks home, the setting is just perfect. This thick mist rolls in, covering everything. It's the perfect symbol for his own state of mind, right? He's confused, he's lost, and he is literally walking toward a disaster he cannot see. And then, who just appears out of the fog? Orlick. He casually mentions that the cannons on the prison ships have been firing, which means convicts have escaped. He's planting a seed here, offering up a convenient scapegoat for what he knows is waiting for them back at the house. So it makes you wonder, doesn't it? Is the real threat some escaped con out on the marshes, or is it the bitter, resentful guy walking right there in the mist? Orlick is basically pointing over there, yelling, "Look, bad guys," to distract everyone from the truth. And here it is, the day's horrific finale. Pip gets home, but it's not to a quiet kitchen. It's a scene of total chaos. There's a surgeon there, and Mrs. Joe is on the floor. She's been struck down by a brutal blow to the head. The violence that we saw earlier in the forge, it didn't go away. It just came back, and this time it was devastating. So a day that started with Pip's private personal ambition has ended in a life-shattering act of violence. It really forces you to ask, who's to blame here? Is it just the person who swung the weapon? Or does Pip's own selfish ambition, the thing that set this entire chain of events in motion, carry some of that weight? What happens when one person's dream to get ahead completely shatters the world of everyone around them?
Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into two absolutely critical chapters of Charles Dickens' Great Expectations, chapters 16 and 17. This is where we see a shocking crime force our young hero Pip to face this dangerous collision between his secret past and his really ambitious future.
So let's just start with this question. Just think about that for a second. You have the one piece of information that could solve a terrible crime. But telling anyone would mean exposing your own secrets, your own mistakes, and maybe even wrecking your whole future. I mean, that's the impossible situation young Pip finds himself in.
All right, so we're jumping right into chapter 16, and things are, well, pretty grim. We're in the terrifying aftermath of a brutal attack that's left Pip's sister, the infamous Mrs. Joe, badly injured and unable to speak. Life at the forge is about to change forever.
And what's so weird about this whole thing is the crime itself. The investigators are totally stumped because nothing was stolen. So you know it's not just some random break-in. This was personal, an act of pure violence. And the only thing left behind is a single, very mysterious clue.
But for Pip, this isn't just a terrible thing that happened to his sister. It's a full-blown crisis of conscience. His brain just instantly goes to the worst possible place. He's somehow to blame. That secret he's been keeping about helping the convict on the marshes has been eating him alive, and now he's sure it's come back to hurt his family.
And it's the one clue left at the scene that really sends Pip over the edge. It's this one object that connects the violence that just happened in his home directly to the secrets he's been so desperate to keep buried.
A convict's leg iron. Pip sees it and recognizes it immediately. And he just knows, with this horrible sinking feeling in his gut, that this thing links the attack straight back to his encounter on the marshes. All of a sudden, he's holding a massive piece of the puzzle that nobody else could ever figure out.
So you've got this incredible, twisted irony, right? The leg iron, which is supposed to be a symbol of the law, of justice, has been turned into a weapon of brutal, unjust violence. It's just this perfect metaphor for how the whole idea of justice is getting all tangled up, not just for Pip, but for the whole society at the time.
So this puts Pip in a totally impossible spot. He's got his suspicions, right? He's thinking maybe it was the journeyman, Orlick, or maybe that other convict, but he can't say a word. He's just too scared. Scared that his own secrets will come out, that all his great expectations will just vanish, and so he stays silent.
And the fallout from him staying quiet? It's just devastating. Mrs. Joe is left with brain damage, she can't communicate properly, and her personality's completely changed. And then, in this really strange kind of creepy twist, the one person she keeps asking to see is Orlick, one of the guys Pip suspects. And all the while, this so-called official investigation is a total joke. It's going absolutely nowhere.
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit as we head into chapter 17. That darkness from the attack is definitely still hanging over everything, but the focus is going to change. We move from Pip's secret guilt to this really quiet, honest confession, and we see his friendship with the kindest person he knows, Biddy, get even deeper.
So, Biddy moves in to help take care of Mrs. Joe, and in the middle of all this gloom, Pip starts to really see her in a whole new way. He notices how incredibly smart and observant she is, and yeah, how pretty she's become. She's kind of like the one steady, good thing in this really messed up world.
Pip is just drowning in all these secrets and his own misery, and he feels this desperate need to just talk to someone. So he asks Biddy to go for a walk on the marshes, and get this, it's the same exact place where this whole mess started for him. He's ready to finally unburden himself.
And on this walk, Pip just lets it all out. He tells her the real reason he's so unhappy. It's his burning ambition, his obsession, really, with becoming a gentleman. But it's not even for himself, it's all for Estella.
And Biddy, she's so smart. She doesn't just pat him on the back and say, there. She cuts straight through all the drama with this one perfect question. She's asking, are you doing this to get back at her or to win her over? She's making him think about whether his ambition is actually a good thing or if it's coming from a place of pride, maybe even a little bit of revenge.
And Pip's answer?
Wow, it shows you just how miserable he really is. He says he'll never be happy in his current life, and it's just so sad, really. He's completely bought into the idea that his life at the forge, the very thing that made him who he is something to be ashamed of now. He's not just unhappy with it, he hates it.
I mean, Biddy's logic here is just airtight. She points out, look, if you want to get back at her, the best thing to do is just ignore her. And if you're trying to win her over, well, she's just not worth it. And the crazy part is, Pip knows she's right. He totally agrees with her. But he's so caught up in this thing with Estella that he feels like he physically can't listen to her advice.
So then, Pip has this moment where he just says out loud, "Gosh, I wish I could just fall in love with you, Biddy." And Biddy's answer, it's just heartbreakingly honest. She says, "But you never will, you see." And she's not being mean. She just sees what Pip can't yet, that his great expectations aren't just changing his future, they're changing him. They're making him blind to the real, genuine happiness that's right there in front of him.
And right then, just as they're having this really honest moment, who shows up? Orlick, just lurking, following them. And Biddy admits that she's worried he, likes her. This just snaps Pip right out of his own head, and suddenly he's furious and protective of Biddy, which shows you just how complicated his feelings for her really are.
So after all that, these 2 chapters leave Pip standing at this massive crossroads in his life. He's facing a choice, and the path he takes now is going to shape everything that comes next. And really, it all comes down to this. You've got the forge life on one side. It's honest, it's real, and it's a future with someone amazing like Biddy. And on the other side, the gentleman life, all about status, money, and this endless, painful chase after the cold, untouchable Estella.
In the end, Pip's whole struggle kind of forces us to look in the mirror, Through his painful journey, Dickens is really asking us a question that never gets old. Is the life society tells you to want actually the one that's going to make you happy? What truly makes a life great? And how often do we end up chasing a dream that was never really ours to begin with?